Well, today we're here with Rand Barfoot in Whitehall, Michigan, for the White Lake Environmental History Project. And Rand, I do want to ask you if you read the legal release and signed that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, to start out, would like to get an idea of your family history in the area. I mean, have you lived here your whole life, or do you have family that's been here, or how'd you get here?
Well, my father was originally from the Jersey Shore, and he moved to Michigan to be in the conservation department. And my mother was from Chicago, and they had a summer home out by Blue Lake, so she ended up liking it here so much that she moved here in probably the 50s, and they met and got married, and I actually live right across the street from here, so I've been in this neighborhood for, well, I think they moved there in 1962, and I've only lived away from here for maybe 3 or 4 years. So I've been in this neighborhood for 50 years. What does that work out to?
So this property was in your family's hands?
No, this property belonged to the Yarwood family. There was actually a burned out house in front of here that we bought with the house and tore it down just because we liked the lot. So.
But you've been in this neighborhood almost all your life?
Yes.
Do you recall your parents at all talking about pollution, considering you live right across the street from the tannery?
Well, it was just an accepted thing then that that was the way business was done. I think the most noticeable thing around here, because at the time Howmet was just a little tiny plant, maybe that employed 200 people maybe at that time. So that wasn't really obtrusive like the tannery was. The tannery had 3 shifts and a lot, cars coming and going, but the smell was just horrendous. I mean, it.
Can you describe it?
I don't think you really can without, it'd be like trying to describe what the paper mill smells like. Just a real pungent, thick, depending on wind direction, it could be worse than others, because they basically took all their effluent and sent it through a series of settling ponds, so all that was just exposed. And I can remember my father talking about the Villa, which was a resort, which is now the Eagles Club, but people used to come and stay for the week, and they had a playground, beautiful sandy beach, serve food there and all that. Well, he'd complain about the smell because it was hurting his business. So that was when they started to put deodorizer in the water, which was now we know it was dichlorobenzene, DCB, and that's the probably the worst pollutant that they had over there, the one that the state was most concerned about.
Did it make a difference in the smell?
Yeah, and that smell would be similar to the like what they use in restrooms or whatever as a deodorant, that kind of sicky sweet smell. And I think it helped a little, but I don't know. It still stunk.
So your parents really just accepted the situation?
I think everybody did. It's just. I think it's kind of like Warren Dobson said about Hooker. We're not making chocolate here. It's just part of the cost of doing business. At that time.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your first memories of White Lake and?
Yeah, I remember White Lake being extremely clean. There weren't any weeds in it. It had beautiful sandy beaches on it, just like Lake Michigan has. And within a matter of 2 or 3 years, maybe when I was 6, 7 years old, the weeds just moved in. And within 2 years, all of a sudden, boom, it was, weeds were growing all over and nobody knew what to do about it.
Well, and I know it was probably a combination of the nutrients going into the lake, but also just some of the invasives coming in.
Yeah, probably new. And I know one of the problems was the celery flats, the fertilizer runoff from there, and then, of course, any farmland upstream. But it was really clean, pleasure to swim in. Montague had a beautiful beach, city beach over there that had a lifeguard, and it's quite often would go swimming in White Lake, and it was beautiful.
When do you recall first being aware of any concerns in the community about pollution?
Maybe more so when it was when they brought the county wastewater system outside of town, and the tannery hooked up to that wastewater system instead of having the settling ponds. I think maybe people were starting to be more aware of pollution, and of course Hooker, that was foisted on everybody. I can still remember people having petitions sent around saying that, usually it was somebody whose family member worked at Hooker, that they should leave them alone and just let them. And I refused to sign any of the petitions. I told them, I think they should take all those people and go out and hang them from a tree myself. I'm not signing the petition.
So when concerns about Hooker Chemical came up, the workers were taking action to support the company.
Exactly, definitely.
What did they do besides petitions?
I think that's about it. Maybe letters to the paper, something like that. But right up to the last minute, they claimed there wasn't any pollution there. I don't know how you can hide 50,000 barrels cut open with an axe buried out in the back, but they tried to deny it right up to the time they were exposed. So
was that more the management or the workers?
I think that was definitely more of a management type thing. How much power do the workers have to change anything?
Were you aware at all of Warren Dobson, who blew the whistle on the company?
Oh yeah, I've talked to Warren Dobson before. He told me his story.
Were you involved at all in some of the protests or working with Wint Dahlstrom or Bob Wesley?
I was talking with my wife this morning about that, how we went to a protest over on Lamus Road. That's not Lamus Road, what is that? Whitbeck Road? Where there were probably 75 to 100 people maybe with signs, and everybody kind of milled around for a while, and the TV cameras got some footage of it, and then after the TV cameras left, everybody went home. So that was, but it did make the evening news. So.
Well, I know some of the people we've interviewed have talked about a protest that happened during the cleanup at Hooker, and additional waste from another company was being trucked in.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't think I went to that one. But I remember the trucks got lost. They were coming down Fruitvale Road in a storm, and if you go past Chase Road, it's a dead end. And it's a hill going down. So these trucks all went over this hill, and it was in the winter. And they couldn't back up it because of the snow. It was a mess.
Do you remember, what was the general feel in the community when the pollution concerns came up?
I think more and more people got on board as they found out what the truth was and what was going on, and what needed to be done.
What was your understanding of the pollution problem?
Well, my opinion, and all the kids in this neighborhood's opinion, was, that it was, how could they possibly do something like that? Because at one point, their settling ponds were so full of sludge that they had to bring a dredge in, and they brought a crane And right where Svensson Park is, where that driveway is, they came with a crane in the winter and built a huge dike from there all the way to the lake. And then they took the dredge, and it was, this marsh that I, described earlier, where it was all beautiful cattails. It had channels that ran through it. It was full of all kinds of different kinds of wildlife, frogs, mink, muskrat, snakes, birds, you name it. It was really beautiful. We even had a raft made out of barrels that were salvaged from the dump, and we could pull ourselves around in some of these channels. It was a real paradise for kids. So when they took and in the springtime and brought the dredge in, and they dredged all of that sediment out of their ponds and pumped it all over into that marsh. And it was kind of like wet concrete was the consistency of it.
No, and you're talking about the tannery.
Yeah. And it smothered everything. It completely coated everything with a layer of this wet concrete looking stuff, maybe 12, 18 inches thick. The whole area, it looked like a parking lot.
Yeah.
And then when it dried out, the stuff all cracked. And you could go out there and walk around on it. It was almost like you were on a different planet.
But how old were you when you noticed that?
Oh, probably like 7, 8, 9, something like that. But it was just so shocking to see, such a, verdant place just reduced to nothing, and it was like, how could they possibly do that? How can legally you do that? It just isn't. So when they switched over, and that's not the end of the environmental crime, when they switched over to the county wastewater system, they started bringing sand in to fill in all of their sedimentation ponds. And once they got the ponds filled in with sand, they just kept bringing more sand, and then they started filling in the marsh, which is the part today that's out there that's kind of circular shaped. They buried all that in sand too, and then they claimed, oh yeah, well that's, because I've been to many meetings and talked to people from the state. I've talked to the city attorney, our environmental attorney when I was on city council. Is this legal for them? This is what they did, and this is the year they did it in. They buried a wetlands. And apparently when they did that, it was perfectly legal that they could do that. So, but I argued all along that they should have restored that part too. So,
Did you, besides participating in protests, did you write any letters, contact politicians, either during the tannery or when you heard about Hooker Chemical?
Well, the Hooker Chemical thing, I think that unfolded more when I was maybe in my 18, 19, 20, so I was older then. But, as far as anything that happened previous to that, I didn't, I was just a kid. I wish that my wife did a report for a school project where her and her girlfriends went down to the tannery and took pictures of the sediment ponds and the water coming out into White Lake. And I wish she still had that. She wishes she still had that, because really there isn't much of a record or anything like that.
What were some of the visible effects of the pollution in White Lake?
Well, you could go down where their outfall was, and there'd just be these clumps of gray matter that just kind of floated out, in this grayish water that would come out, and as we now know, it completely coated that bay, which forced them to dredge it all out and dig it all out, which, you'll still talk to people today that go, they should have left all that stuff in the lake, that it just stirred it all up. But, my opinion is they should have dug it out, and I'm glad they dug it out, and in the end, it's a good thing,
Well, and I know I had heard that too, and in some cases, if it's being covered up, it might make sense, but this one was apparently not being covered up.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's just amazing that, it was just so brazen, everything they did. They actually had another outfall down at the other end of their plant where this water had come out and it was like orange, and it was hot. I don't know where that came from, and I don't know what part of the process was, but, as kids, we were all over that place every day. I mean, the place wasn't even fenced in. It's really amazing that nobody fell into one of the ponds and, and was de-haired, is basically.
What were your concerns about the pollution as you found out more about it, as probably more in your young adult days?
Probably almost more of an aesthetic thing, although, you think about the health implications of it too. I mean, they do have a lot of people around here that die of strange diseases and cancers and things.
Do you? What can you tell us about your tenure on White House City Council? And
I got on City Council, it really wasn't a big issue on everybody's radar. I had gotten involved on City Council. It was one of those things where you get involved on a one-issue thing, and then you find out there's a lot more layers to being on City Council than just one thing.
What was your one issue?
The property that's now part of Goodrich Park, that at the time the administration and the City Council had decided it was a good idea to buy it and sell it to a developer and develop it as a boat resort or a boatel or something like that, and that kind of got stuck in the water there without having anything done, and there were a lot of people in the town that were like, we don't want that developed. We want to keep that as part of the city park, and luckily that vote won out the day. So that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is the fact that we were able to buy that piece of property and the piece of property down by
by the mill pond.
By the mill pond there. So we spent a lot of money. I mean, maybe today probably wouldn't be too popular on that, but I think we spent about $700,000 on land, and then we spent another $280,000 in legal fees suing the tannery and the state.
Well, how did that come about? I mean, it was in the news. There was a lot of public attention to it after this article came out. What made the city council decide to take action?
Just a willingness, I think, to want a cleaner environment, a clean town, and a clean lake. We kind of made a commitment that when I was on council anyway, that we would do whatever we could to, improve the. I think we kind of thought green in a way. I'm not sure they do today. It's one of those things where politics goes in waves. You'll have one group in there for a while, and when they fall out of favor, then you get the other one, and it just keeps going back and forth.
You hired an attorney?
Well, an attorney and an environmental consultant, so that we could talk to them and find out what our options were, and we always took the hard line on it versus the, well, we won't do that, let's try and do it this way, and it really is amazing that it's been cleaned up to the level it was, because at one point it looked like it was never going to happen at all. And when they actually came forward and said they were going to dig all the rest of the sediment out on land, because the state had already given them permission to leave it there. They were just going to put a sheet of plastic down and build on top of that, from my understanding. So
you had an environmental consultant and an attorney, and do you remember what the initial focus was? I think the initial focus was on the sediments in Tannery Bay.
Yeah, that got it started. As long as the tannery might have still been in operation then, that the focus would be first, to clean up what was in the water, and then once the plant did close down, to clean up the ground, the site itself, and we changed the zoning, which I think the tannery sued us over that one. I can remember some kind of deposition I had to do for that.
What? How did you change the zoning?
Well, it was zoned industrial, and for a higher and better use, we decided that residential use would be better. So that zone was changed to R3, which is multiple family. This zone that I live in now is R2, and then it steps down to R1, which is, goes along with planning
So R2 is
rules.
homes and then maybe condos and duplexes, and then
Yeah.
R1 is single-family homes.
Yeah. And they weren't happy about that because they were, they were more concerned about getting top dollar for what they ended up, if somebody would have came along and paid them more money for an industrial use, they obviously would have taken that, It's,
Were there any rumors to that effect?
no. So the Tannery in turn sued us, and they were trying to accuse us of a taking, that, we were taking their, ability to make top dollar for their properties. And I can't remember if they lost the suit or they just dropped it, one or the other, but it didn't go anywhere.
So the property ended up being zoned for residential,
Yes.
R3.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember what role the city played in the investigation of Tannery Bay? I mean, did the environmental consultant look at the information or provide some guidance?
Yeah, the environmental consultant and the lawyer basically told us we were going to lose. That basically that they had the law on their side.
For Tannery Bay?
Yeah.
Do you remember the reasoning?
I think it had to do with the way the state law was written. It was.
And do you know why that wasn't so?
Well, it's another one of those legal questions where you can interpret things two different ways. But there's kind of every time that you'd get a new governor, they were changing the environmental laws all the time. So and the standards are being lessened or raised or what. It's.
Did any state or federal politicians help out?
I think we did get some support from our local state officials, but I don't think it went any higher than that.
As far as the land site cleanup, was your city council involved in that at all? Because that was probably a little bit down the road.
Yeah, they were still kicking that around. It wasn't. I think I was off the council by then, like 2001, 2002, something like that. But it was something that I had looked at extensively, living here. I had the books from the consultants and poured through them. In fact, I actually went and had my own sample taken, I just didn't trust what they were saying, so I paid an analytical laboratory in Lansing. I believe it was $65, and I went down and took my own sample from.
Took a sample of what?
The stuff they were digging up from putting the air sparging unit in. The stuff's like a purple color with a bunch of hair in it and that, and it stinks like the smell I previously tried to describe. But it's once you've smelled it, you always recognize it. I mean.
So the kind of the soil or mud along the shoreline.
No, this was actually part of one of their sediment ponds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. These ponds still had sediment in it, ranging in thickness from a foot to up to 8 feet in places, which is what they ultimately dug out. And seemed that was fairly recent. I do remember because we watch them right here from the window. Just the nastiest looking goo you've ever seen, stink. Oh man, they dig all that up, put it on those trucks, and haul it all away. So.
Well, you had a front row seat to both the Tannery Bay cleanup and the land site cleanup.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Pretty much hell. I mean, you're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of trucks. Loud trucks, all kinds of heavy equipment. We knew on the lake cleanup thing that we were going to be in for a hell of a summer when they showed up on Saturday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning right across the street here with 4x8 sheets of sheet metal, and we're throwing them off the back of a flatbed truck onto the concrete. It's like, it's going to be a long summer, and it was.
So you had to put up with a lot for the cleanup.
Well, we've had the lake cleanup, which was hell. Then we had them destroy the building, which was hell. And they had to haul that all the way, right? And it all went right by here. Then they dug up everything that was there and hauled it all the way. Then they hauled all that sand in to replace what they hauled away. So, which ruined the road. They trashed the road, so then we needed a new road. So that was last summer's hell for us, was trucks, and more trucks.
Well, would you, if you had it your way, would you have said no to the cleanup?
Oh, definitely not. Well, that was part of the irony of the situation where, when we'd be going through the dirt, the dust, and the noise, and then go, I had something to do with making this happen here, it's coming back to bite us now, but, I'm happy because I know I live in a cleaner neighborhood now, so. And the best and highest use of that land isn't industrial, so it's too bad they couldn't keep it just like it is right now and make it a nature preserve, but we need somebody with real deep pockets to come along and make that happen.
What would be your best vision for the site would be natural?
Oh, definitely. They should have never filled that part back in with sand there that when they dug all that stuff out. I mean, that's...
What was your viewpoint of community leaders during the time when issues with the tannery surfaced? Local community leaders?
Everybody on city council that I was on, everybody was pretty much on the same page that, we wanted it cleaned up, and we wanted it cleaned up to the highest level possible. And I'm glad that we had the money available to be able to do that, because I'm sure today it wouldn't happen, And another thing too, that if we would have lost, we would have set a bad precedent for the rest of the state too. So the fact that we were able to finally make it happen and win, and it hopefully some other place in a similar situation in Michigan will be able to use our example or our experience to their advantage.
When the owners of the White Lake Villa complained, they went to city council and didn't have much luck. What do you think prompted a change in attitude with your council?
I think just changing times. People are less, at that time anyway, we started out with Earth Day, things were going that way. I mean, it's hard to imagine today that Richard Nixon is more of an environmentalist than Barack Obama, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. That you'd have the Republicans actually preaching for clean air and clean water and clean land. What are they preaching for today? Less regulation. These regulations are hurting us. You should go easy on the coal miners. Go easy on the people that want to build the pipelines. They're not going to have a problem. We're not going to have a leak. It's going to be good for everybody.
What do you think of White Lake's overall health at this time?
I think it's getting better. It's still pretty sick, in my opinion, but because I saw what it was like when it was clean. So,
what needs attention?
Well, I think this green road is a step in the right direction. It's amazing that got built, and it'll be interesting to see how it ends up working. But you need to protect habitat. You need to have more natural habitat. Control runoff, especially agricultural runoff. Whether those things, we can do whatever we want on White Lake, but if back up on the White River all the way to Hesperia, they're doing whatever they want up there, it's not going to help us at all.
What do you see for the White Lake area in the future?
Well, I'm hopefully more projects along, or at least more thinking along the lines of the green road here, because actually we just had all that rain. It really does work. All that water's being collected now and filtering through the marsh. I mean, people have to start thinking along those lines. I know one of the things that really hurt the quality of White Lake was when Howmet built across the street from here, because that where that parking lot was a beautiful forest with all kinds of different flora and fauna in it, and above that it was at one time it was an apple orchard and forest. There was some massive trees over there that got cut down when they built that plant. But all that water now, it doesn't get to filter through that whole, it got double filtered before. It went in the ground and then it came out in this forest, which was actually more like a swamp. Water ran through that, then it ran through the marsh on the way to the lake. Now where's all the water coming from? It's coming from all the parking lots and the road, and it's filtering a bit. So that does help. I mean, it's better than nothing, but you still need, the watershed itself needs to be protected. If it's all paved and it's all storm sewers and it's got, every time it rains, everything rushes in there, what are you going to get in there? Asbestos, oil, rubber, whatever's on the street.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Just that it'd be interesting, and I think young people are more aware right now than they maybe have been in a couple of years. But I'm going to say when we were doing all the battling with the Tannery and the state over them cleaning that up, any meetings that you go to, you very seldom see anybody there under the age of 50, say. I mean, you go in and be a sea of gray heads, and it's like, where's the young people at? I mean, this is going to be their town to inherit, but maybe we have the same problem. You were asking me questions earlier. What did I do, as far as protesting when they were polluting all that stuff? I just kind of threw my hands up and went, there is nothing I can do about it. That's the way the powers that be are. So, but hopefully, by having the Tannery site be cleaned up and having the Public Advisory Council and people get on companies like Hooker and DuPont and Coke Chemical and all the other people that came here, keep the pressure on them to clean up, because they always seem to be trying to find a way to weasel out of it. And it's just people have to keep public, aware, keep the public aware of it, and I think there's always going to be a good percentage of people that are willing to stand up and say, we're standing up for the environment. Just like that meeting last week with this people standing up for the dunes, I mean, if you read the comments in the paper that people write in, from other parts of the state, did you read any of that kind of stuff? Who are these people? They're like, oh, his property's right. Where's the problem? This guy should be able to put a driveway through there. He's got an easement. We don't, case closed. We don't even need to look at this one, Then somebody will go, well, you don't live here. You don't even been there. You haven't seen it, And there's just a lot of good people out around here, that are real, true, environmentally concerned people. That, they'll show up at the meeting. They'll vote for candidates that think, along green lines. So,
Do you think the issues we had with pollution changed the community?
I don't think they did. I think it just drove people into two camps. One of them, that's a good thing that you cleaned everything up, and the other one, it was a bad idea. You should have left it there. You just stirred it all up. So, and I don't understand how people can think that way. If you've got, like Wint Dahlstrom used to say, how dirty does the baby have to be before you change the diaper? That's. Wint was real straightforward and direct, and he didn't mess around. I mean, it was.
Do you think our overall history with pollution, the Tannery and Hooker Chemical, and the experience we had, taught us some lessons?
Well, I hope it did. But one thing that did happen, they wanted to build a steel mill I think it would have been out near Hooker. I don't know if you remember that or not, that North Star mill. And that got shot down in Muskegon, and it got shot down here because of all the problems that people had had with industries being dirty and not, not being a good neighbor. But where that mill actually ended up at, it was run clean and very, whoever got the business, it was a good corporate neighbor. They did a good job. They did what they said they were going to do, and we turned that down. But the next time, a chemical factory wants to move in town, I'm sure the vote would be 50-50. You're going to have 50% of the people would go, let's have it, man. We need some jobs around here and some business. And 50% are going to go, no, we don't want that kind of business around here. So,
Do you, we ended up being in national headlines for pollution. Do you think our image is starting to change at all?
well, it would be nice if we got some national attention now that that problem has been maybe not solved, but a big step towards curing it. And the thinking behind the Green Road, I think that's really good too. I know there's a lot of people that badmouth that and say, what a waste of money, what'd they do that for, or whatever, or any of this lakeshore restoration, which I think has been fantastic. I mean, I one time, when I was on city council, and the water was low, we had a lake cleanup. And along with the other townships, everybody got together and we got volunteers. And I kind of went around to assess different areas to figure out what we could do or how many people we'd need. And between Whitehall and Montague, you start looking there, and there were all these busted concrete and pieces of steel rail and junk, stuff in the water that you're going, we're just out here picking up trash. We can't address these problems. And this lakeshore improvement project that they've done over the last 2 years, they've cleaned all that stuff up. It's a beautiful, what a great job, You need more projects like that, more money like that.
Well, anything else, Rand?
I would like to see, I'm not volunteering to do it, but I would like to see a government program to let areas that they now manicure and mow, let them go back to natural state. Because I think that's good for the environment, just and birds, animals. It's cover. It's green lawns don't do anything for the environment. So that the area, the city of Whitehall, or any other governmental agency that wants to get involved should actively address trying to protect and preserve habitat and eliminate the manicured look. But
Well, thank you very much.
I'm sure people say I'm crazy too, so that's fine.
Thanks, Rand.
Thank you.